Thanks, everybody. It's an honor to be back. You know I've been here a lot the last couple of years, and I'm going to be a lot the next 4 years, because I'm working for you. I love Decatur, I love Macon County, and you guys are bellwether. How Decatur goes, how Macon County goes, is how Illinois goes. And you're suffering from bad policies coming out of Springfield. You are suffering, and we're going to change that this year, right now, right in the next 4 months. Not just next 4 years, next 4 months. That's why I'm here, to talk through the detail with you, because I need your help. I need you to come on over to Springfield with me. You know, I'm living there now. Come on over to the house, visit with me. But come over and see Speaker Madigan with me. Come over and see President Cullerton with me. Knock on some doors over in the Capitol, because we need the legislature to take some tough votes. And I've been having breakfast and I've been having dinner every night when the legislature's in town. Just like tonight I'm doing it, tomorrow morning I'm doing it. Whenever they're coming over into town, I have them over. I have anywhere from 6 to 12 legislators. And we go through the detail. You know what? I meet with Republicans and with Democrats. We got into a mess on a bipartisan basis. We're going to get out of it on a bipartisan basis. And you know what? We're making good traction. The legislators understand. Some are ready to take the tough votes. Some are a little nervous about it. But we all need, you know, they all work for all of us. And they're elected to do a job, and that's to make sure we're prosperous and we're growing and we're creating good careers and we have great schools and we have a reasonable tax burden on our families. We all need to deliver that result, and they know it. And if you help buck them up, they're going to make some tough votes. And we need to even encourage a few Republicans who are a little nervous about change. You know, change does not come easily. And the special interest groups that control Springfield, who control a lot of the government process, they're strong. They're strong. They're strong in both political parties. And you know what? Those groups have a lot of money. You know, money is a powerful thing in Springfield. You know, they got a lot of money. You know whose money they got? They got your money. They got your money, and they're spending it to protect themselves against your interests. And that's the whole key to turning the state around, is getting the power back away from those special interest groups and back into your hands. You control your future. You control what goes on in your economy. You control what goes on in your schools. You control what goes on in your county government and your city governments. Springfield shouldn't be telling you, shouldn't be dictating based upon the special interest. You should decide. That's the whole key. Because if the people of Illinois are empowered to control our future, we're going to thrive. We've got the hardest working people in America. Hardest working people in Illinois right here in Macon County. We've got the most fertile farms in America. Best location of any state in America. We've had the best infrastructure. We've let it rot away, but I'm going to put many billions of dollars as part of our turnaround agenda into our infrastructure so it's world class. Bridges, locks, dams, roads, canals. The best in the world here in Illinois and right here in Macon County. But I need your help. This is the key time, and it's right now, this next 4 months. Right now, we're going to get our whole turnaround agenda into a handful of bills, pieces of legislation. And that process is, they're being drafted right now. They're going to be done in the next 2 weeks. And I want you to see those bills, and I want you to advocate to get those bills passed. And I think you've been handed out the key, the piece of paper. Right there, that's what we want to do. I'd like you to read it, understand it, and call us if you've got questions or things you don't understand about it. But I need you to help message it. We're blessed. We've got the media here today. That's great. We need them to understand what's going on so they can spread the word to all your fellow residents here who aren't able to come here today. We've got to get the word to the media what's going on and spread the words about the message. Now, I'm very excited. We've had many mayors. You know, the mayors are frustrated because we've had to cut the budget to get a balance. And nobody likes cuts. It's painful. It's not, frankly, the mayors and the county chairmen around Illinois did not create our budget problem. Right? And it's not fair that they should have to be cut. But the reality is we've got to balance the budget. I have to balance the budget. And without tax increases, that's the law in Illinois. That's the budget that we put forward. But the mayors, once they understand what's going on, the mayors have all looked at our agenda and said, we're endorsing the agenda. And we've got dozens and dozens and soon hundreds of mayors and county chairmen around the state who are going to be endorsing our agenda. And here's the key, empower you. What you should control. See, right now we've got the government union leaders think you're working for them. They're working for you. They got it backwards. They work for you. It's your government. It's your schools. It's your economy. You should decide what goes on. You shouldn't be told by some other group. It's yours. Your county government here in Macon County. You should decide what gets collectively bargained in your county government. If you want strong collective bargaining and collectively bargain everything, terrific. Keep that, that's fine. If you want everybody who works for you to have to join a union and pay union dues to work for you, fine. But if you don't want that, you should decide that. It's your government. You should decide that. You have local control. And Macon County, whatever you choose, you shouldn't tell Moultrie County. Moultrie County can decide how they run their county government. That's fair. It's the American way. That's the way democracy ought to work. Same way in city government. In Decatur, do you want everything to be collectively bargained? Do you want everybody who works in the city government to have to join a union and pay union dues? If you do, terrific. No problem with that. But that's fine. But should Decatur, once you decide in Decatur, should Decatur tell Forsyth how to run their city government? Or Mount Zion? I think not. I think every community should decide for themselves what gets collectively bargained and who has to join a union and who doesn't have to join a union. It's your government. It's your cities. It's your county. You decide. Once you decide and once you control that, the balance of power gets back so it's truly balanced, and the voters and the taxpayers have a voice again in their government and your cost of your government. That's the key. Same thing in your schools. They're your schools. And I'm all in for teachers. This is not about fighting with teachers. In fact, I want our teachers paid more. But the teachers' union is not the same thing as the teachers. And the teachers' union agenda isn't necessarily what's in the best interest of your kids. You should control what goes on in your schools. If you want everything collectively bargained, terrific. But you should decide that. They're your schools. The teachers' union shouldn't tell you. They're your children in your schools. Should every teacher who teaches your child have to pay union dues? If you want that, fine, terrific. That's awesome. I got no problem. But you should decide that. You shouldn't be told by somebody else. And let me tell you, there's a lot of teachers who come to me and say, we don't want to have to pay the dues. We didn't want to even be in the union. You know what? Democracy is, and I'm not anti-union. I just believe people should have a choice. And I want you there. They're your schools. You should decide what goes on. And there's a big debate going on right now around this issue of right to work in the economy. And let me be clear about this, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know, right to work is it's a trend sweeping the nation. I mean, Indiana's gone right to work. Wisconsin just went right to work. Missouri's got a right to work bill pending in their legislature right now. I think it's could well pass shortly. Michigan went to right to work. I mean, good grief. I mean, that's a shocker to me. My dad's family is a lot of Michiganders. It's a very big shock. So there's a lot of, and you know, right to work's been common. In Tennessee, it's been forever. In Iowa's been right to work forever. That's one of the reasons Iowa has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the United States. Texas, the economy's booming. They're right to work. I don't advocate that Illinois become a right to work state. I don't support it. I don't advocate for it. But I certainly advocate you deciding how it goes in your economy. We can allow that. We can authorize you to decide. If you want Macon County to be able to compete with Tennessee or Indiana or Texas, when a manufacturing company is looking to relocate and is exploring where to go, you decide whether you want to compete for that or not. Right now, you know, there's a list. There's a list of states that are right to work, and there's a list of states that are closed shop. The relocation firms track the list. And there's thousands and thousands of companies who won't come to a closed shop state when they're expanding or when they're relocating. You're either on the list or you're off the list. And all I ask is, let's get Illinois on the list so we can compete. That's all. And if Macon County wants to be a closed shop county, fine. No problem with that. We can still, there's other ways to try to compete. But if Effingham County wants to be a right to work county, why can't they be? Why should Springfield tell them what they can or can't do? Or why should Winnebago County be told by somebody else what they can or can't do? Or Moultrie County? Why can't the counties decide? Or the cities? Maybe Macon County wants to be a closed shop community, but maybe Mount Zion wants to be open shop, employment flexibility, wants to be an employee empowerment zone. Because there's a lot of employees who don't want to have to pay union dues. They don't want to have to join the union. It can be decided by you. I want to authorize you and allow you to decide. That's it. It's not complicated, it's not hard. But let me tell you, if we get a handful of counties and cities around the state who decide to be employment flexible, employment power, you know what? Then we've got a level playing field with Texas and Tennessee and Indiana. You watch. I'm going to travel around recruiting companies. Companies want to be in Illinois for all the reasons I said earlier. We got the best people in the best location. They want to be here if the playing field was level. And I'm going to Indiana. And I like Mike Pence. He's a friend. And I like Mitch Daniels. They're friends. But you know what? They've been stealing our jobs for years. We've lost 48,000 manufacturing jobs the last 5 years. Indiana gained 42,000 manufacturing jobs. And I like those guys. But you know what? I'm not going to have that go on anymore. And I'm going to Indiana, I'm going to Wisconsin, I'm going to Iowa, and those companies we've been bleeding for the last 30 years, they're coming over here. They're coming back home. They're coming right here to Macon County. And I'll tell you something else. You know, I'm a friend of Rick Perry, who's the former governor of Texas. And my predecessor as governor in Illinois, Governor Quinn, used to complain. He used to whine about Rick Perry coming up here and stealing the Illinois companies. And he's just say, Rick Perry should go home, he's being mean, he should just stay in Texas. He shouldn't come up here. I said, Rick Perry's doing his job. Rick Perry is growing his economy, he's competing. You know, it's about time we compete, because we got the best people in America. Let's unshackle ourselves so we can compete. And I told the Governor Abbott, who replaced Rick Perry as governor, and I said, Governor Abbott, let me tell you, you got about 6 more months in Illinois where you can come up here and have any success at all stealing companies. You got about 6 months left, so you better work hard fast, because I'm coming. We're going to change the regulations and the taxes. Let me warn you, buddy, I'm coming right down to Fort Worth, and I'm coming right down to Houston. We're going to get a lot of those companies coming up here to Illinois, because we have the best location. We have the hardest working people. And once we have a competitive playing field by the regulations and the taxes, we're going to get it done. You know we got to change workers' comp. Workers' comp is broken in Illinois. It's corrupt. The trial lawyers are making millions off the backs of our small business owners. Caterpillar told me that workers' comp costs 5 times as much in Illinois for them as it does in Indiana. And they've been growing their jobs out of Illinois for years. For years and years. It's a tragedy. They'd rather be here, but we're not competitive in Illinois. Workers' comp, unemployment insurance, lawsuit abuse. We have one of the most abusive lawsuit systems in America. And the property taxes are punishingly high. That hurts all companies. It hurts our homeowners the worst. And that's what it makes me want to cry. The homeowners who in Illinois have had to sell their homes because they can't afford the real estate taxes anymore. Once you're empowered to decide collective bargaining and the cost structure in your government, the property taxes aren't going to have to go through the roof anymore. And I'm committed to public education. And despite our financial crisis we've got today, I'm increasing state support for the public schools by $300 million in this budget. And I'm increasing substantially every year going forward, because I want the best schools in America in every school district. And I want vocational training and job training brought back into our public schools again, so that we've got the most highly trained workforce in America, especially right here in Macon County and right here in Decatur. We get that done. We can do that over the next couple of years, and then we're going to be ready to thrive. Great vocational training, great high school and college preparation, reasonable tax burden, and a pro-growth, pro-job creator economy. We are going to thrive and kick some tails. Now, you know, we've got a government that's broken. We have hundreds of unfunded mandates coming out of Springfield being put on your schools and your county, hundreds of them. And it's unfair. If Springfield's going to create a new regulation, they ought to pay for it. And if they're not going to pay for it, they shouldn't put it on. And we've got a commission for them right now to rip out as many of those unfunded mandates as we can possibly take out. Same thing with prevailing wage and project labor agreements. Now, some people are cranky at me for saying this, but let me explain to you what's going on. In Illinois, if it's a government construction project, if taxpayers pay for it, competitive bidding is not allowed. Basically, the bidding process is set up, only certain companies can bid, only certain wage rates can be paid, and certain contracts have to be let. There's no real true competitive bidding. And that's wrong. Why? Because the taxpayers are paying, is the bidding process have to be restricted. You know what, on average, and I've seen the data, on average, construction projects in Illinois cost taxpayers anywhere from 20% to 30% more than they would otherwise have to because we don't have competitive bidding. And if we want to spend tens of millions, hundreds, even billions of dollars on our schools and our roads, if every time we spend $1, 25 cents of it comes right off the top through excessive costs, wrong for taxpayers, and it's that many fewer schools we can build, that many fewer roads we construct, or bridges. We've got to get the power. So if the mayor is building a new city building, if he wants to, the mayor and you as voters can decide what the bidding process is. You can get control of that process. That'll save huge money that we can put into our schools, into our infrastructure, and get a thriving economy. Same thing with these pensions. Now you've got to get control of your pensions at the local level. I want to empower you to do it, and the same at the state level. And this is the most important thing that we've got burdening us right now, and I want you to understand my view of it. I don't think you reduce the pension benefit of anybody who's retired. They got their deal. Now the legislature tried to reduce the pension benefits of retirees. I personally think that's wrong. We'll see what the Supreme Court decides, but I think that's wrong. I also think if somebody's been working for a while, they paid in with a certain set of assumptions to get a certain set of benefits, I think they got that. But if they worked under a certain set of assumptions, they should have that deal. That's my personal view of it. However, there is no reason that we can't freeze and protect the pensions that have been accrued so far, and then create a second pension plan for future work starting tomorrow that's much more affordable and more flexible and much more like what voters have in their everyday lives. There's nothing unfair about that. There's nothing unreasonable about it. I personally believe it's entirely constitutional. However, I want to go the extra step. I actually want to do a constitutional referendum to put it in the Constitution that we can change future pensions, not past pensions, future pensions for future work. There's no reason that, and I've explained that to teachers and police officers, and they get it. They're, some would rather keep the old deal, but I said, the old deal is not affordable. We're going bankrupt as a state. And let me tell you something that's really scaring a number of the politicians in Springfield. Chicago is literally going bankrupt. Not just figuratively, literally going bankrupt. And that's where Illinois is headed if we don't get a handle on our pensions and the cost structure of our government. And that's that's not fair to anybody in the process. It's not fair to the government workers, it's not fair to the teachers, it's certainly not fair to taxpayers. We've got to change the system. So this is where I need your help. We got to become pro-job creator, pro-hardworking taxpayer, look out for your interests, get you to control what goes on in your government. It's your government. This belongs to you. And when we do that, we're going to restore the pride, prosperity, the greatness of the great state of Illinois. We're going to be the greatest state and the greatest nation on earth. Thank you for coming out today. God bless you. Let's do a little bit of Q&A. Thank you very much. I would love it. I think is it a one-pager that you guys have, or is it a couple pages? I don't know. One page. So the rest of the agenda is at illinois.gov. If you can come online and read it, there's about a 9-page summary of everything. I'll tell you, there's 2 interesting things on there that I would like you to read if you come to illinois.gov, because it can help with our messaging. People are saying, oh, that Bruce is just a radical right-wing. My policies are centrist, very centrist and bipartisan. You know what? I did an executive order to not force union dues collection in the government. People say, oh, that's radical. That's not radical. 29 states already have that. And you know who else has it? The federal government. That's not, it's actually a bastion of conservatism. And you know who put it in place originally? Franklin Roosevelt, who's about as pro-union and as much of a Democrat as anybody in American history. He put it in because, and I've got the quote, you can read it online. His quote, his concern about government unions, very different than trade unions. Private sector unions need to compete, government unions don't. And when they can influence the politicians with campaign cash, it's a broken system and it's a conflict of interest. Franklin Roosevelt knew it and was against, he wanted to highly restrict collective bargaining inside government. Franklin Roosevelt, of all people. And then there's also a quote in there from Michael Bloomberg. He's former mayor of New York City. The reason I brought that in there is he is independent, mostly a Democrat, but he was mayor of New York City, and you read in his last speech, 12 years as mayor, his last speech, he brought up these key issues about what's going on inside government. You read it, and you'll understand our challenge. If you take out the words New York City and put in the words City of Chicago, there's our problem right there. You take out the words New York City and put in the words State of Illinois, you got our problem right there. It's a total summary of the challenge. And here's from a Democrat who tried to change the system and failed. But we're not going to fail in Illinois. When we work with you, you are empowered, we will not fail. And we'll turn our state around, get the government working for you now. Question, yes, sir?
What are some of your highlights that you're envisioning changing with workers' comp?
Yeah.
That's a big part of my business. You've been in my business, you know what I do. Yeah. It's 10% of my expenses.
It's huge. It's the #1. When I travel the state, and I've been traveling for years now in every county, the 2 things I hear the most: workers' comp and property taxes. Those are the 2 things I hear, 100 times a day. Workers' comp, we really don't have causation in the system and a direct link to a work injury. You can claim under workers' comp for health issues that are very, very indirectly connected to work, if at all. And that's wrong. People deserve good health care, but workers' comp is designed for injuries on the job. We don't really have that in Illinois. Most other states do. And we can look at what Indiana does. All you got to do is look at other states with reasonable workers' comp. And I don't need to have us, Illinois doesn't need to be the lowest workers' comp rates in America. We just shouldn't be in the top 3. The top 5, which is what we are today. Let's aspire to be average. Let's aspire to be average. And if we're average, we will get a lot of companies who are fine. Then you can compete. Then that's not disproportionate part of your cost structure. And we've got a task force working the legislation right now. You'll be able to read the bill, and you and your attorney who handles workers' comp, you can look at the legislation. Love to have you be part of it. If you see we're missing something, I just want us to be highly competitive. I don't want us to have the lowest insurance rates on workers' comp in America, but I want us to be competitive.
I know one of the things other states are doing, they have it in their workers' comp to where if a person has an accident, they test positive on a drug test, find the accident, they get no benefits whatsoever.
Well, that's an interesting point. That's worth exploring for what we do. I don't know, I'm not in that level of detail with the attorneys, but that's a good point to talk about. Yes, sir.
The state of Illinois has one of the highest levels, if not the highest level, of local governmental units.
Yes, exactly.
Talk about that. What are you going to do to address that?
Yeah, that's a great point. So, in addition to hundreds of unfunded mandates and these prevailing wage restrictions, we have more units of government in Illinois than any state in America. I think many of you know that, but we have 7,000 units of government. 7,000 units of government, double what your average state has. We have 2,000 more units of government than the number 2 state has. This is, there's no reason. And pensions, patronage, cronyism, layers of bureaucracy, inefficiency, overlap, redundancy, it's all part of the process. So we formed a statewide task force. A number of mayors and county chairmen are on it, a number of business leaders, a number of elected officials, a number of members of the General Assembly. And the goal of that commission, that task force, is to look at how we rationalize the units of government and how we reduce the number of unfunded mandates. Because there is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that we can save for our taxpayers in Illinois without having to reduce government services, by just being rational about that process.
And what time frame will this play out?
Over in the coming months. I've got to go double check when their first report is due, but it's this year in real time. Yeah, that's a good point. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are term limits still something you push for?
Yes, a great question. The answer is yes. And I want you to understand, this is where I need your help too. That's part of the term limits are part of our turnaround agenda. I believe it can change the culture there, where people aren't there to make a business career, to make a lot of money from politics. They're there to be a public servant for 8 years and leave office. George Washington did that when he founded America. That's a great. And people who say to me, well, but I want to serve the people. I said, there's a lot of jobs. You don't have to stay locked into one job. You can run for other things. So we collected the signatures in the fall to get it on the ballot. And term limits are supported by the vast majority of voters in both political parties, Democrats and Republicans. We lost in court. The politicians in Springfield who don't want to give up their power sued. We lost. And here's the challenge we've got. In the Illinois Supreme Court, in our Constitution, changes to the General Assembly that do not start from the General Assembly passing a law to change, when it's done through the voters like we did, the change has to be structural and procedural. They put those words in. Nobody knows what that means, but the Supreme Court always says, well, term limits aren't structural and procedural. That's the reason we changed the ratio of House to Senate members, and we reduced or increased the number of votes to override a governor's veto to make it structural procedure. We still lost. And here's the opportunity. If together we can encourage and pressure the General Assembly to vote term limits bill to put it on the ballot, it doesn't need that structural and procedural language because the General Assembly voted it themselves, so we can get it to you. And my argument with the General Assembly, even though some of the leaders don't want to give it the powers, let the people decide this issue. If it's a bad idea, the voters will vote it down. If it's a good idea, let the people, this is empower you to decide. And I'm getting a fair number. I don't have a majority yet, but I'm getting a fair number. The General Assembly's like, okay, let the people decide. We'll see if I'm going to push, help me push that, because I'm not going to give up on that. I'm going to push it hard. But to win, I have to get it through the General Assembly. That's a lot harder than doing a voter referendum. Because a lot of these guys have been there and they're like, ooh, I like my job. I'm making a lot of money, and a lot of these guys have side businesses. They got law firms, they got businesses, and they're making a lot of money on the side because of their political power. That's the kind of stuff we got to get out of the system. Any other? Yes, sir.
Governor, what lessons have you learned from Governor Walker, Governor Daniels in Indiana and Wisconsin about the process of change, which you're outlining in the next 4 months?
Well, it's a great question. So I've spent a lot of, I'm a student. I've never run for office in my life, so I need to be a student. So as I started to think about running for office a few years ago, and encouraged by the Republican Government Association. I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right and do it well, so I'm going to go study. So I've been to meet with Jeb Bush years ago. I had much time with him. Scott Walker, Mitch Daniels, Mike Pence, Terry Branstad in Iowa, Rick Perry, Bobby Jindal, Chris Christie. I've sat with all of them for hours and hours, listening and learning to what they got done, how they did it, how they positioned themselves. That's how we developed our game plan. Now Scott and Mitch had the advantage of having Republican legislatures for most, actually Mitch had a Democratic legislature early on, and he still got things done by executive order. That's what I'm doing today. I don't want to do, but a lot of the change can't come from executive order. It's got to come through the legislature. But you know, we've got a lot of leverage that those other states didn't have. I don't have a Republican legislature today, but the reality is we have a financial crisis, and as I can't remember who, maybe it was the current mayor of Chicago said, you know, never let a crisis go to waste. We have a crisis. We have a crisis, and we can use that as an opportunity to encourage change. And we've got the person who's willing to spend less in government controls the conversation, and I'm willing to spend less. I don't want to have to cut down. Here's the challenge. I'm a believer in a social services safety net. I believe that we need to protect our veterans who are struggling. We need to help our developmentally disabled. We should be helping our children in poverty. We should have a good Medicaid program. Ours is full of fraud and abuse. We're going to clean up the Medicaid program. But I believe in good social services. We have to choose. Do we want good social services, or do we want a massive government bureaucracy that's consuming the resources? We can't afford both. The people of Illinois can't afford both. And I want to shrink the government bureaucracy and get the money into social services and back in the pockets of homeowners and small business owners who create the jobs. That's where we're aligned. And there's a lot of Democrats, you know what? As I've met with a lot of Democrats in the General Assembly, they get that and they're that way. They'd rather have the money be in the social programs, not in the bureaucracy. So that's the reason we've got a shot. And we can use the fact that I'm willing to put money into the social services. I don't want to just cut everything. But we've got to make structural change to grow to get the money into that. And there's a lot of support on both sides. There's resistance on both parties. There's resistance on both parties. More than I was, might have originally hoped. But there's also a significant portion of both parties who are ready to make some changes. So I'm pretty optimistic. Proof will be in the pudding over the next 6 months, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. We'll look forward to working with you.